A nondescript plane sits at Signature Aviation at the Buffalo Niagara International Airport. If you drive by, you'd have no idea who's going to fly on it or where it's going. You can't buy a ticket, and you won't find a flight number on the departure board. But this flight, and flights similar to it, have been arriving and departing from the Buffalo Airport consistently, sometimes multiple times a week, for the last year. These are flights chartered by ICE, transporting detainees out of state, sometimes without their families or legal counsel knowing where they're going.
I think the American public doesn't realize how much this is happening.
Here's the publicly available data we've been able to pull together. Since January 2025, there have been 226 suspected ICE charter flights in and out of Buffalo as of March 21st. Why do we say suspected? We know from flight records that these are chartered planes, and several of the companies associated with these planes have been awarded transportation contracts with ICE. The one consistent aspect of the data, every single flight leaves Buffalo and flies to a location with a larger ICE detention center. The most common out of Buffalo, Louisiana, Texas, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Flights peaked in September 2025, with 59 coming in and out of Buffalo that month alone. Congress dramatically expanded funding for these operations last year with the One Big Beautiful Bill, providing nearly $30 billion for ICE enforcement, including transportation and removal operations.
As far as detained representation, it's exploded. We've had nonstop calls, day and night.
Matthew Borowski is an immigration attorney with Borowski Whitmer.
I've had over 300 clients in the last roughly 6 or 7 months.
And the frequency of flights has led to scenarios that speak to the very core of the Constitution, due process.
I've literally sent one of our staff members or another attorney out to Batavia to go and collect a signature from a client, only to find out when we arrived there that earlier that day they were flown out to a different facility.
If you've got a client who's in Batavia, are you getting any notice that they have been transferred out of here?
We get no notice before the fact.
Borowski says if someone is picked up by ICE in Buffalo, they'll be transported to Batavia the same day. But in recent months, he's seen a trend where
they could then be moved out of Batavia within 48 hours or less in some instances.
Sometimes before a detainee can contact a lawyer, or if they have contacted a lawyer, they might be transported out of state before that attorney can file a habeas corpus petition on their behalf.
The Due Process Clause of the Constitution protects everyone who's in the United States, not just U.S. citizens. So before you can deport someone, you have to make sure that you follow the due process of law by giving them the opportunity for a hearing.
Stephen Yale Lair is a retired law professor from Cornell, where he spent more than 40 years teaching and practicing immigration law. He also ran the asylum clinic at Cornell and wrote a 22-volume immigration law treatise, which has been cited in more than 450 federal court decisions across the country, including the Supreme Court.
The only way they can try to get out from immigration detention is through this habeas corpus action filed in federal court.
And he says the quick transfer of detainees out of Buffalo through these chartered flights creates a layer of confusion. If lawyers don't know their clients are being flown out or where they're going, they can't file the appropriate petitions in federal court.
Everyone has a due process right, and if you send someone to a detention center for what essentially is a civil violation without giving them the right to a hearing, that violates the Constitution.
We have had situations where by the time we've been hired to file a petition for somebody, they've already been moved to a different district, and we can't get jurisdiction here if they're already in a different state.
There could be a few reasons why detainees are being moved so quickly. According to data published by ICE in February, their population snapshot was 745 detainees. The facility is only rated for 650 at a given time, so bed space could be an issue. Another reason, legal experts we spoke to note that detention facilities out of state fall under different federal circuits, one where court rulings have been more favorable to federal immigration enforcement. Other data published by ICE themselves paints a picture of who's actually being detained in Western New York. As of February, 83% of detainees in Batavia have no criminal record, and 80% of them have been designated as a non-threat. Professor Yale Lair notes that immigration enforcement is a civil matter, not a criminal one, meaning those detained have not necessarily committed any crime.
And just as you or I would not be sent to jail for a speeding violation, so too they should not be detained for many months on end or deported quickly.
And the speed at which detainees have been transported out of Buffalo,
it's taking a huge toll. We have children without mothers. We've got families without breadwinners. We've got people that have been here for decades.
Now, I reached out to a spokesperson for ICE locally with several questions for this story. I have not yet received a response. On your side, Nate Benson, Channel 2 News.